This is my home where I grew up. My mum and dad, my brother and sister, and it was a 2-bedroom house, and 3 of us were in the one room together. There was a lot of, difficult times as kids. There was good and bad memories in that house. My good memories really probably were when I went to school. This is where my school was, Rathbone, and this was a wonderful school. It was a safe place, and we would just literally walk through the entry there and you would be in school, so we were never late. We're now walking towards the school that I went to, which was the Liverpool Institute High School for Boys. This was a real privilege to come here to this school, grammar school. We had to pass the test to come. There was just a couple of us who got in the school from our junior school. And yeah, I wanted to become a lawyer when I came here, and it all just didn't work out like that. From an early age, it was literally a fight to survive in the school. Many times I'd come home with black eyes, my clothes ripped, nosebleeds, you name it. And that was for the whole time that I was there. It wasn't just one event, it was every single day. A guy in the school went to stab me playing football one day in the gym, and I got into a fight, and at 13 and a half I was expelled from this school which had all my dreams wrapped up in it. Yeah, that was my beginning and end in the Liverpool Institute High School for Boys. Started to go from there with my dad to work, and I was bringing home like £600 a week, and I was going out, so I was drinking, I was taking recreational drugs. Started hanging around with guys who were doing, robberies. I was going out robbing, taking drugs throughout the week, using a lot of cocaine, and to come down off the cocaine, we would use heroin. From then, it was heroin every single day. Around this time, I'd met my son's mum, Jane, and we had our own home. Jane was pregnant and James was born. I started to use crack cocaine, and from then I couldn't even describe what I'd become like. And I think back to what dreams and aspirations I had, and I looked at my life and I was just a mess. And there would come to a point where Jane had had enough, and she came and said, look, I need to leave, and I can't let James grow up around this. And they left, and he was probably 8, James, at the time. I was living in the house on my own, and literally the house became like a crack den, and there was addicts living in there with me. I remember one day the police came, and I was smoking drugs in there, and they arrested me and they took me to the police station, and they said, look, Jane wants you out the house, we're just going to let you go. It put me on the streets. One morning, actually, I'd been in the bin shed all night. It was so cold, and I was wrapped up in a carpet that was in the bin shed. And I came out in the morning and I met another addict, and he said to me, look, he said, if you're ever hungry and you need something to eat, he said, there's a church down the road that you can get food in. And I walked in, and a guy touched me on the shoulder, and it was George, and it was a lad who I'd known for years, and he was like shocked at what I'd looked like, probably pretty emaciated really, stinking, not being washed. And they said, do you want to get help? And you know what? I said, I do. And they said, we know a place where you can get help. And I got down to Gladstone's, and it was an outreach in Liverpool. I knocked on the door and I couldn't get an answer. I walked to the corner of the street, and it was like a voice that I'd never heard before. And it said, go back and knock on the window, but knock really loud. I knocked on the window, and a guy come down the stairs. I watched him, and he opened the door, and I said, can you get any food in there? And he said, yeah, come in. He made an interview with me the next day with a guy called Tony, and who was going to get me into a rehabilitation centre, and I eventually came to Nottingham. There I was in Betel. Even though I didn't want to know anything about God at all, my main desire was I didn't want to see James upset and heartbroken again. The thought of my life turning around and being a dad again to James, that's what really more than anything else, held me there. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was. I didn't know who I was. I didn't have any identity. My only identity was a drug addict. But when I came to Betel, the Lord really started to soften my heart. I started to see that I was different and I didn't need to be that man that I came through the doors. I really wanted to be this man of God that they told me that I could be. And I really started to believe that. I loved the community. I loved the working with the guys. I loved the, just the camaraderie. And God started to give me a heart for these men. I knew where I'd come from and I'd seen addiction at its worst. And I would see lads coming in who were really ill. And it wasn't burdensome to be with them and look after them. It was actually a joy. I think I needed Betel, and the Betel was where the Lord led me. I don't think if it was anywhere else, I probably would have been back on the streets and probably not even here today. But this was the right place at the right time, and it worked because people in here were serious about seeing lives transformed and changed. Yeah, God was here, but God's people were here. And today I'm married. I have a wonderful wife named Tanya. I met her in Betel, and we've been married, I better get this right, 13 years. Not only did I find my wife here, but also I gained a son, George, who's a wonderful young man. I'm pastor and director of a centre up in Scotland. I now lead the work with my wife and the men that we have up there. I'm so grateful for the wife that I have, grateful for the son that I have, grateful for the mum that Jane has been to James through all my years that I've been in here, grateful for George. It's difficult to put into words. Sometimes you can pinch yourself, and even in the difficult times and the challenges, I'm so far removed from where I was when I came through the doors with just a small bag with nothing in it, no clothes, holes in my legs, and looking where I am today, and 19 years later.